Welcome to Your Family's Health, the program that focuses on healthcare issues with unique and different modalities for taking charge of your health today. Experts talk weekly with our continuing roster of guests from around the country and right here in Nassau County to keep you up to date on the latest health issues and trends. Take care of your mind, body, and soul. Spend the next half hour with the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and get on the journey to better health.
Hello and welcome to Your Family's Health. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. We hear about ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, so often. And that's actually a good thing because it means more people can learn about it and how to improve their situation. The power of the human mind is enormous, and with ADHD, some extraordinary things can be accomplished with it. My guest today is Dr. Tamara Rosier, the founder of ADHD Center of West Michigan, where she and her staff work with individuals with ADHD and their families to learn strategies and develop new skills to live effectively with ADHD. Dr. Rosier is also the president of the ADHD Coaches Organization and the author of Your Brain's Not Broken, Strategies for Navigating Your Emotions and Life with ADHD. Dr. Rosier, welcome to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Welcome. So glad to have you.
I am thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell us first a little bit about you and what made you want to focus on, ADHD.
Well, I have ADHD and I wasn't diagnosed till late in life. I wrote my book on ADHD because people really understand what ADHD actually is. They think it's a naughty boy disease.
Yeah.
That, little boys who can't stay in their seats and are ill behaved. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of grown people who struggle with ADHD.
So this is a personal testimony as well as an information book that gives a little bit of your story as well as information for everyone else who's interested in knowing about it. So for those who don't know, what is ADHD?
Well, so there's a lot of symptoms that people know, like disorganization, poor time management, trouble focusing on one task, excessive activity for those of us who are external, have the external ADHD, poor planning. But what people don't understand about ADHD is that it really affects our emotional well-being. So we tend to have low frustration or tolerance for frustration. We tend to have frequent mood swings. And I can explain why in a moment, why that is so. We tend to motivate ourselves emotionally. We tend to kind of feel either big feelings or no feelings. And we have trouble coping with stress. That takes a toll on ADHD adults. And so what my book does, it talks about the years of my coaching and working with ADHD adults and tells their stories. So I did include a little bit of my story, but I don't think I'm terribly interesting. So don't worry, listeners, you won't read a whole book about me, but you will read about a lot of people who are working through ADHD.
So doctor, how is this diagnosed?
It's problematic being diagnosed right now. Diagnosis can be very sloppy in some areas, can be very expensive. A lot of people don't have access to a good diagnosis. So this is something we really have to work and improve on. So the best diagnosis has kind of an executive function component. It has an observational component, meaning people in your life kind of speak to, oh yeah, she has trouble coping with stress. And it has other diagnostic components to it. And that's really the gold standard. So if people are just checking a couple boxes, that's not good enough. We need a differential diagnosis because ADHD can look like narcolepsy. ADHD can look like OCD, bipolar. It can look like a lot of other things. So we want to be very careful when we're diagnosing. But there is kind of a trick to this. If clients or patients respond well to a stimulant, then usually we can assume that the person has ADHD.
Wow. Okay. And is there for the average person who really has changes or difference in their behavior, hyperactivity, is there a way that they can have a tool to check off to see, is this me or is it not me? Is there something that I can download from a website to say, okay, this is definitely something that maybe fits me?
Yeah. Well, and that's what I recommend clients do when they're like, I might have ADHD. Oh, and by the way, here's where I want to mention ADHD is highly hereditary. Ross Barkley thinks that if there's a father with ADHD, there is an 80% likelihood that father will have a child with ADHD. It's lower for mothers. But now think about the impact of that. And as a nurse, if you see 0.1 association, that's a big deal. We're talking 0.8 association. So we really need to start to look at families. And if you have a family history of ADHD and you kind of feel like, I'm feeling really kind of off emotionally a lot, you might want to check out whether or not you have ADHD.
Would you say that ADHD is a diagnosis that wasn't commonly discussed in years past? That you're hearing more and more about this ADHD diagnosis, and so that maybe your father, grandfather, or generations back did not diagnose it, but we can pin it to a behavior. Would you agree to that? I not only do I agree. First of all, I did get my ADHD through my father's line. And my great-grandfather, he dropped out of school. And remember, that was socially appropriate back in the 1920s and 1930s. And he went to work in a mine. And he was left-handed. So that just made him somehow a freak of nature. They couldn't handle that back in the 30s or in the 20s. So I'm telling you this because he had an option to go work in a mine. Now, he later moved to a bigger city and taught himself how to be an engineer. And society was set up in a way where you could maneuver. If you were smart, you could kind of maneuver your way in some circumstances. But ADHD people have always been around us. It's just society has gotten more difficult to navigate. Yeah. And the demands on our executive functions, those planning, remembering, and executing plans have become so great. The other reason I think we hear more about it is we can now see it on brain scans. And so we can see the parts of the brain that are affected by ADHD. A quick example is if your listeners tap their foreheads, that's where their prefrontal cortex is. Many ADHD folks have poor access to their prefrontal cortex, which is a big bummer. Fortunately, it's not where intelligence is stored. But it's a big bummer if you're trying to live in the modern life, because short-term memory's there, working memory's there, planning is there, knowing what to do is there, when to do it, and how to do it. And so that's why those of us with ADHD can look frazzled a lot, because we have a short-term memory issue. And really, it's the short-term memory issue and the emotional management that I see most of my adults with ADHD working hard to manage. So diagnosing it is both physiologically and behavioral in diagnosing this. So you're looking at a brain scan as well as the behavior to diagnose someone with ADHD?
No, we don't use brain scans to diagnose just because it's cost prohibitive. And the regular clinic doesn't have access to that. But we can see it in fMRI studies and other imaging studies.
And so how is it treated?
Well, this is actually a hot topic because people have big feelings about this. So those of you who are listening, just stay calm as I list the options, because these are options. Medication works quite well. There are some people who do not like to take medication. Bill Dotson has said that about 80% of us respond well to stimulants. Stimulants are a category of medications. They tend to leave our system, even though there's a little bit of a half-life. They do help us manage the dopamine production in our prefrontal cortex. So that's one option. And by the way, some of my clients respond so well to medication, and they come into my office and they say, okay, so I only have one thought at a time. Is this normal? Because they've grown up with a cacophony of thoughts in their head all at once. So medication is a good option. ADHD coaching is a great option. ADHD coaches help you figure out how your brain works and how to live life in concordance to how your brain works. That's another option. Therapy is also an option. Especially ADHD folks, we're very susceptible to trauma, and trauma sticks in our brain. And so if you have any childhood trauma, adult trauma, and ADHD, I would strongly suggest seeking a therapist. Personally, I recommend EMDR therapy for those with trauma plus ADHD. We work with that in our center, and we've had great success with that.
What does EMDR stand for?
Eye movement desensitization and regulation. And what that does is, it's kind of a misnomer, but it's actually taking a shortcut. It's going past that prefrontal cortex that acts as a gatekeeper back to the limbic system where the negativity has been stored. And is a very powerful tool. And so I strongly recommend that. It's less talk therapy, more of a multimodal therapy.
So if I come into your office or a office for treatment of ADHD, shall I expect that they're going to start me immediately with medication? And if so, how long does it take for that medication to kick in so that I really see the effects of it?
Yeah, our office doesn't medicate. We don't have an MD. And so what we do is we're the big net of resource for people. So we have ADHD coaches. We have a speech language pathologist because she's really good at catching all the little disses that come along, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, that really come along with ADHD. It's those, I call them the disses. They happen in the same part of the brain. And so there's little glitches, and she's really good at finding those. She's also very good at helping younger children work on executive functions. We have therapists who are trained in EMDR and ADHD. And so they tend to work on the more extreme cases and comorbid cases, like when you have ADHD and autism, ADHD and OCD. And that's where our therapists work quite a bit. So lastly, we have a medication education coach. She does not prescribe, but here's what we found. I hired her because she's a nurse who has a lot of experience with this. And what we found are physicians will go, well, what do you want to be on? And their patient's like, we don't know. And doctors will sometimes, if they're not being careful, not all doctors, right? But some doctors, if this is not their specialty, they'll go, well, do you think you need to increase? Or they'll start them on like an Adderall instead of, if they really looked at their history, maybe Concerta would be a better start for them. So this medication education coach doesn't tell the answers, but helps the patient kind of think through and sort through his or her options.
So this medication education nurse, if you will, goes to the physician kind of educated as to what's the best path?
No, this medication education coach works only with clients and helps the client figure out what is my best avenue, because physicians aren't giving enough guidance.
All right. So you would say that this is a precursor to going to a physician for a prescription for ADHD.
Yeah. Here's an example. A lot of times we'll start a client, we suggest a stimulant. Well, what happens is the stimulant is processed in the liver. And then our body's like, cool, I can process this. In fact, I'm going to get really good at processing it. But the better the liver processes it, the less effect we have. And so a lot of times there's a period where we have to increase the dosage till we find the just right dosage. Not only does this medication education coach help with what's the right medication to be on, she's also helping with what's the right dosage.
Okay.
I was working with a male in his 50s who was on 10 milligrams of Adderall. And when I was asking him questions just as his ADHD coach, it became very apparent he was getting little or no effect from the 10 milligrams. And he had been on it for a very long time. By the way, 10 milligrams is next to nothing.
Right.
And so I just said, hey, are you comfortable talking to your doctor about an increase? And he's like, I don't know what to say. And so I sent him to our medication education coach to kind of get a plan, increase his dose to the optimal level so that he can function better. And guess what? I talked to him last week and he's like, I didn't realize life could be easier. Now, for your listener, I'm not pushing medication. I'm not sponsored by anyone. I'm suspicious of Big Pharma too, guys. But guess what? Education with medication really does help us kind of optimize our performance.
So let's get back to the causes of ADHD. And I know that you said it's very, very familial, kinds of inherited a lot of this particular ADHD. What are some other risk factors that I may look at as being hinged to or connected to ADHD?
I'm going to take your question in a little bit different spin and let me know if you're like, nope, that's not the direction I wanted. But we need to start taking ADHD seriously. Stop making it a joke. Stop making it of, like that dog in that one Disney going, squirrel. We got to stop making a joke of it because having ADHD is actually serious. Barkley, who I mentioned before, he found that those with ADHD, on an average, live 13 years less than their neurotypical counterparts. 13 years. Now think about that. First of all, we have young boys unmedicated driving too fast, right? Drinking, driving, risky behavior. We have other kinds of risky behaviors when they're young. But then as they age, the risk of diabetes, right? First of all, we know people in the U.S., this is something that has become a huge health crisis for us. But those with ADHD, if they develop type 2 diabetes, they tend not to manage it well. And so that shortens their life. So ADHD has all these components of if we're not careful, if we don't treat it seriously, it can negatively impact. ADHD is also affected by social economic status. So the lower economic status you have, the more at risk you are of dying, prison, and other things. So I wish people took this seriously. And I know I'm getting on a soapbox here, but we've got to stop making it a joke and understand that this is mostly an invisible thing that we can't quite see. It is a neurological difference, but it puts a lot of people at risk.
You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, and today you are learning about ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. My guest today is Dr. Rosier, the founder of the ADHD Center of West Michigan. She is also the president of ADHD Coaches Organization and the author of Your Brain's Not Broken: Strategies for Navigating Your Emotions and Life with ADHD. How prevalent is ADHD?
We don't really have a good answer for that. Some people are saying 1 in 8 people have ADHD. Some people are saying it's more like 1 in 15. We don't really have a great answer for that. We're guessing at this point. What we do know is that ADHD goes across every culture. We can find it on every continent, in every country. So this isn't just an American made-up issue. It really is a problem for everyone.
I want to hear about your book. It's called Your Brain's Not Broken: Strategies for Navigating Your Emotions and Life with ADHD.
Yeah,
that title really speaks a lot too.
Yeah, thank you. I wrote the book because after years and years of coaching, I had people coming into my office feeling like they were broken. And they're like, what's wrong with me? I'm never good enough. I can never do this. And they're just beaten down. The Greek mythology of Sisyphus always rolling that big boulder up the hill only for it to roll back down. They were feeling like that. And moreover, they weren't understanding the emotional component behind their ADHD. And so I wrote the book kind of just to give people hope and to teach them what their brains are actually like when they have ADHD and how they can work with their brains better.
So I know in your book you compared someone with ADHD's inner landscape like with a smartphone, do not disturb, right?
Yes.
Talk to me about that. What do you mean by that?
In the book, I talk about our emotional battery. And every ADHD person has an emotional battery. And I help my clients figure out where the emotional battery is. And if you remember, we motivate ourselves using emotions. Very quickly, it's because we don't have access to that prefrontal cortex, that part behind your forehead. And we rely on a different part of our brain to motivate ourselves. And so that draws a lot of emotional energy. And so I ask my clients to kind of think of themselves as charging their iPhone, or if you're an Android user, charging your Android.
Yeah.
So in the morning, you might wake up with 100%. But just like the apps on your phone, there's some apps that really drain your battery faster.
Right.
I teach my clients to understand how fast is your battery draining over this? And what do you need to do to get more battery? It's been a very effective tool, and it's part of emotional management. Yesterday, I was very tired. I had 3 meetings that were just draining. And then I had an interview on a podcast right after that. And I was very aware of the emotional energy. And so I took a little break and thought, okay, I've got to get some emotional energy back. Well, it's finally spring here in Michigan, even though it's allergy season for me, but it's beautiful out. So I took a walk around our building, and I kind of walked outside. We have like a little bridge outside our office. And I really focused on how am I going to kind of rest and rejuvenate even for a short time. But that's an example of emotional management. So
it includes getting out, exercise, eating healthy, I guess, all of those things that would cause you those internal, I guess, endorphins to be released so that you have more of a height in your emotional. Does that, you find that stabilizes your emotions, or is that it allows you to get through the day when you do that? How do you incorporate that? Or how do you suggest people incorporate that?
Yeah. So those of us with ADHD, we end each day usually emotionally exhausted. And if you have listeners who have ADHD, they just went, yep, that's true. Because we're exhausted at the end of the day, because just trying to be an adult and doing all the executive functions that adulting has with it is exhausting. And that's the thing I want your listeners to understand. We're not dumb, but those tasks that, like getting your calendar right, unloading your dishwasher, all these like mundane, boring tasks, those are the ones that kind of deplete us and they make us tired. And even though we're grown-ups and we're going to push through it, by the end of the day, we're depleted. And I can't say this enough. If you're neurotypical and listening, and you're thinking, oh, I know someone with ADHD, ask them, how do you feel at the end of the day? Are you emotionally tired? It's a different kind of tired than neurotypicals have.
So if you have ADHD or you're living with someone with ADHD, how can we create an environment that's supportive, that we really want to support that energy and that tasks, those tasks being completed and stay on course and on focus? How do we facilitate that?
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm delighted about with my book. I wrote it for ADHD folks, but I also wrote it for people who are not ADHD, but they have loved ones who have ADHD. And I wrote that because a lot of times they can't figure out, why is your brain working like this? And why don't you just do it this way? And so the feedback I've been getting from a lot of neurotypical readers have been, this has given me more grace and kindness for the ADHD people in my life. And I have to tell you, that feedback just thrills me. I love when ADHD people write me and say, hey, this book has really done great things in my life. But knowing that I've helped neurotypical people love better and be kind and understand what they're seeing, that is just such a wonderful outcome that I didn't expect.
So tell me, how does ADHD affect academic performance?
Academically, one of my niches is I work with high IQ ADHD students. I also work with a few surgeons, lawyers, just people who are really smart. And guess what? They can't organize themselves. Or I work with doctors who don't get their charting done, salespeople who don't do their reports because they're not doing those mundane tasks and carrying it through. Academically, if you are very, very smart, you're going to perform just like a very smart person. It's like there's ADHD, you get points deducted in your performance a lot just from being ADHD. Like you're more likely to miss assignments. You're more likely not to track with something. And this is, by the way, untreated ADHD. I just read this morning that 14% of those with ADHD tend to graduate from college.
So tell me about your book. Where can I find it?
Wherever books are sold. Amazon. You can go to my website, tamararosier.com.
Spell
and
it for us.
You can get information. Yeah. TAMARAROSIER.com. The center's website is miadhd.com. And we have great ADHD coaches there and therapists. But just a caution, our therapists are only licensed in Michigan.
Well, you've given us so much information about ADHD, and we thank you so much for sharing your own personal story as well as what we can look for and how we can be of benefit, right, to this very serious, right, disease. I don't know what you say is disease process or condition.
You know what? I tend to just say it's just a neurological difference.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, Dr. Rosier, the founder of ADHD Center of West Michigan, who is also the president of ADHD Coaches Organization and the author of Your Brain's Not Broken, Strategies for Navigating Your Emotions and Life with ADHD. We appreciate all of this information, and we hope you stay healthy and continue to do the great work you're doing.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Dr. Jeanine Cook here from the nursing department at Nassau Community College, and we want to thank you for listening to this week's edition of Your Family's Health.
We'd like to get your feedback on your family's health. Send your comments by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu. Podcasts of today's show are available on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This program was produced at the studios of Nassau Community College in cooperation with the nursing department. Join us next week for another edition of Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.